Hi guys and welcome. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at setting up a JML Dri Buddi Elite clothes dryer, and if you can hear in the background the gentle patter of rain on the roof of the conservatory above me, this is precisely why I've gotten one of these, because trying to dry clothes in this part of the world, and especially in winter time and spring and what have you, is just a pain in the backside, and this is much neater than hanging everything over your radiators. There's nothing special about the box itself, it's just a storage box. So we've taken out the contents, and what we have, using one of these tubes as a handy pointer, over here is the actual dryer unit, which is essentially a heater fan, similar to your electric fan heaters, but obviously shaped in such a manner as it's designed to sit underneath and blow air through the dry buddy. We have the cover, which is a fabric nylon sort of waterproof type fabric like you might find in a tent, for example. We have 16 lightweight sturdy aluminium poles. We have 4 casters, 2 of which are lockable, which you would place at the front, so you can wheel this around and lock the casters and stop it from running away on you. We have a wire frame which sits across 2 of these tubes, and the heater unit sits on to allow airflow up through the base, which has an air filter, which we'll have a close-up look at the unit after we've assembled the main frame and before we fit it. And finally we have 6 plastic pieces. These are end pieces. As you can see, they have holes in one side to make up the basic frame of the unit. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and begin the assembly. So taking 2 of these frames, and firmly pushing in a tube to each end, we will make the base. Completely forgot to mention, it also comes with a user guide, of course, and this gives you the usage instructions. Do not overload it, make sure your clothes are not dripping wet, obvious common sense things, and then it gives you the guide and instructions on how to set everything up. It's very straightforward, and then just a few safety bits at the back. So we fit the casters. Now the instructions call out for the casters to be fitted last. This to me makes no sense, because you'll have a sort of wobbly frame that you're shoving casters into. So common sense says to me, fit the casters now while the base is one unit, and these simply push in. And as I said, the locking ones, which are quite obvious in their in the difference because they've got this catch sticking out of the end, the locking ones go into what will be the front of the unit, and it will sit like so. And then these can be unlocked so that the unit can be wheeled around and then locked once it's in place to stop it moving if it gets knocked, for example. The next step is to take 2 more tubes per side and push them into the upright sections. We now have the basic structure. The next step is to take the cover, open it up fully, and unzip the 3 zips at the front to open it up, and you'll see this is like one of those sort of compact wardrobe units you can buy. The base is obvious by the fact it has a reinforced ring which sits around the heater section, and on the corners of the base we have holes for the poles to go through. With the open flaps, if you just move them out to the side like so, and then repeat the same at the other side, then slip the whole unit so that it sits down at the base of the frame. Once this is fed through, what you're left with, as you can see there, is the base with the ring at the bottom that your heater will sit on. And then up here is the top, and the top is distinguishable from the base when you first unfold this by the little vents which allow the steam to escape from the top. The next step is to take 2 more side pieces and 2 more rails and make a unit exactly the same as the base, the only obvious difference being that there are no casters on this particular unit. So we'll go ahead and do that. I'll state at this point, although it's never fun being wrong about something, I have in fact revised my opinion about putting the casters in last, thinking it seemed like a silly thing to do, but also I thought they would be harder to fit than they were, and thinking it would more likely have the effect of distorting the frame as you were trying to do it or making it fall apart. It does in fact make it harder to push these down and get the bars seated in nice and firmly. So as I say, I've revised my opinion on that. I've taken out the casters, and what this allows you to do is actually push down with more pressure to make sure this frame is much more rigid. So at this stage we've added 2 more side pieces, 2 more crossbars to make the first frame. There is an option at this point, because you are given enough bars to do this, you can actually add a bar into the centre here through either the lower or the upper holes, and this is for if you have babies or small children and you can hang their clothes, which obviously are considerably shorter, or if you have short clothes, for example, if maybe you have short skirts or sort of crop tops perhaps, and because they're shorter, being hung lower and closer to the heat source, they will dry much quicker. So you have the option of doing that, you can put that in. The majority of the clothes I'm going to be drying in here being sort of trousers and shirts and t-shirts and that kind of thing, this is going to be no use to me, so I'll not be putting this one in here, it'll just have the one in the top. So the next step is the same kind of thing again. We've got 4 more uprights and then 2 more side pieces with these 2 crossbars and a centre one. This is where you hang your coat hangers with your clothes on to allow them to dry. So I'll go ahead and do that and we'll come back with that completed. As you can see at this point, we have the complete frame with a rail at the top. The rail at the top has been put in the lower hole of the 2 available, and it's surprisingly sturdy as it stands. And the next step is to pull the cover up and over the top of the frame. So we're going to go ahead and do that just now. You have of course got a little bit of wiggle room because the bottom will slide up holes to allow you to feed the top over the frame. Like so. At which point it will then come back down. Now of course you'll notice, well you won't notice because you probably can't see it on this video at the moment, but I'll pan down in just a moment so you can see, but the cover itself does not go all the way to the base of the frame, and there's a very good reason for this. So we'll just pan down so you can see there. You can see there's a gap at the bottom. The reason for this is because the heater unit sits at the bottom of the frame. What we're going to do now, so that's the basic frame completed, and you can see it's a reasonable size. You actually get quite a few clothes in there. We're going to look at the base now and go ahead and look at installing the heater, but we'll take a close-up look at the heater before we do. So just a quick look at the base. Oh, something worth mentioning as well. If, of course, you don't use the middle rail in the middle section, The added bonus there is you've got a spare aluminium tube, which is just down there and in front of the workmate legs, as you can see, and you can use that for playing as a lightsaber or something, which is really, really cool. So there you go. So we're going to scoot down to the bottom and let's focus it in on that, and we're going to have a look at sighting the heater unit. So this little wire piece that was shown at the start of the video, this quite simply, much like sort of plastic coated coat hanger wire, quite simply this sits across the bottom rails in the middle, and the heater unit sits on this. This gives an air gap underneath, and this is essential because, as you'll see in just a moment, we're going to have a close-up look at the heater unit and at the controls and what have you, and you'll see why that's there. So here in front of us we've got the heater unit, and as explained previously, it's very similar in design to a fan heater that you would use to heat a room, and the difference being the heat comes out of the vent on the top and the cold air is drawn in from underneath. On the unit itself we've got a standard UK 3-pin plug. We've got a fan dispersal unit held in with a crosshead screw, which you need to take off to fit the unit, and on the front we have an on-off switch and a timer. Now it's you can just switch it to on and it will pump away ordinarily, but you can also turn the timer up to 180 minutes in various increments with half-hour increments marked, and this will allow the unit to work for the set amount of time that you've set it to, and then it will automatically switch off afterwards. I wouldn't personally recommend using the leaving it on method, because you're putting 1200 watts of heating into an enclosed space, and if you happen to switch it on and then wander off out and forget all about it, that's probably not a good thing. It's not the kind of thing that you'd want to leave on unattended anyway. Underneath the unit we have the input area. This is the fan that draws in the air, blows it over the heating element, and this is a rudimentary, very coarse air filter, which is going to stop huge claggy lumps of dust and such getting in there and blocking everything up. Now obviously for that reason, where possible, this would be better on a hardwood floor or a laminate type or lino type floor, rather than being on a carpeted area, especially one that doesn't get vacuumed regularly, because it is going to be sucking lumps of dust in, just like a fan heater would. And then just here you'll see the domed element where the heat comes out, and this dispersal unit, obviously it hits that and then it's going to circulate and rise. We've taken off the air dispersing cover with a crosshead screwdriver, and this is the only thing that you really need a tool to do while constructing this. And we then take our unit and feeding the wire, while we're trying not to let this run away from us, even though the wheels are locked, it's on a smooth floor, so it's kind of doing its own thing. Feeding the wire up through there, we put the unit onto its little stand and then sit the reinforced ring area down here around the heating element. The one thing that I would actually like to see on this, the one sort of negative so far as it were, is some kind of ring which fits around here and would clamp that in place. Now once it's been in place for a while, I suspect it will sort of form itself down to the base of this heater, but having been folded up, it's at the moment got a bit of a tendency to crease up where it's been folded, and my slight concern would be this bit contacting the metal heater area. As I say, once it's been working for a while, I suspect that will settle down, but I think it would have been an extra nice touch if we'd have had a rubber or plastic, silicone or something ring which fits down over there and just clamps that in place. Now obviously when it's oriented, it needs to be oriented with the control unit to the front, of course, and then once in place, replace the cover, and with your crosshead screwdriver. This is now plugged in and we're ready to switch that on and test it. A couple of things to bear in mind for the use of this. Now you will need coat hangers, obviously, because you hang those on the middle rack and you hang your wet clothes in there, and it gives you a maximum weight of clothes. I think it's is it 15 kilos? I'll have to double check in the manual, and we'll put that in, if not in the video, it'll be in the comments or the description below the video. But leave a gap between your clothes, common sense stuff. Leave a gap between your clothes for the air to circulate and help them dry. You will need to put this somewhere where there's airflow, because you're using hot air to dry wet clothes. It will create condensation and steam. So you do see comments from people saying things like, I bought one of these and used it in my flat and everything was covered in condensation. Well, of course it was. It's hot air and wet things, you're going to get condensation. That's common sense. So where possible, site it close to a window. If you have a bathroom, for example, with an extractor vent, that would be perfect, because you could leave the extractor vent running. That's going to suck any sort of condensate in the air outside, which is exactly why they're in bathrooms, for when you have showers and baths and the like. So yes, a bit of common sense there. Site it near some kind of airflow, or have it somewhere where you can open a window afterwards. And at the same time, it will need to be close enough to a socket, or you will need an extension cord. Now I'm going to go ahead and switch this on so you can see it running and get an idea of the actual noise in operation. And as you can see there, as you can hear, it's actually not very loud at all once it's running with the cover on and the hot air is going inside there. And as you can see, the hot air is filling it up much like a hot air balloon would. It's noisy enough to hear, but I could quite happily sit with that in a room watching the TV or listening to the radio, for example. It's nowhere near as loud as I thought it was when I first tried the unit. But when I first tried the unit before I assembled this, it was sitting on the floor. So obviously some of that is going to be vibration, which is dampened by the fact that it's in here. That's essentially it for the video, and it's already getting quite warm in here, even with that sort of humming away relatively gently. So I imagine this would dry quite quickly. I'm not going to go through a whole drying things video because I don't have a load of washing to dry as yet. So that's it for this video. That's the JML Dri Buddi Elite assembly and use section. I will do an update once I've had 1 or 2 uses of this. One final thing to look at before we complete this video is the running cost. You'll see various comments online that it costs from anything from 9 to 20 pence an hour to run. You can actually calculate that accurately. All you need is your electricity bill to find out your kilowatt hour per unit cost. In my case, that is, if we can focus on that, 16.75 pence kilowatt hour per unit, and the kilowatt rating of the actual heater element in this case, which is 1.2. It's a 1200 watt, which is 1.2 kilowatts. What you then do is you multiply your kilowatt hour rating by your kilowatt cost. In this case, it's 16.75 times 1.2, which equates to about 20 pence per hour. That means that per hour of use, this will be costing you about 20 pence. Now, from what I've read and what I've heard, this unit will dry even heavy items like denim jeans in about 3 hours, which is about 60 pence worth. So as you can see with the size of the unit, you'll get a fair load of clothes in there, and theoretically you can dry a reasonable average load of clothes for about 60 pence over a course of 3 hours use. Now, your own kilowatt hour usage will depend on the electricity tariff that you've got. To work it out accurately, you will need to have a look at your own electricity tariff and figure out what it is and how much that will cost you. But that's this video over for the assembly, running costs and setup and use of the Dri Buddi Elite. I will do an update on this video as and when I have used it and dried a couple of loads in there. So thank you for watching. I hope this was useful, and we'll see you in the update. And please be sure to check out my other videos on my YouTube. There's a range of things on there, and hopefully you'll find something you like. Thank you for watching.